Well, it's also a critical day for the Democratic candidates as voters head to the polls in 6 states. 352 delegates are up for grabs. Michigan's the first major battleground to hold a primary, offering the biggest payoff of the night, 125 delegates. And the Democratic frontrunners are already squaring off. Joe Biden's campaign seems to be avoiding confrontation, while Senator Bernie Sanders sharpening those attacks on former Vice President Joe Biden, particularly on trade. Take a listen.
Joe is going to have to explain to the people and the union workers in the Midwest why he supported disastrous trade agreements like NAFTA and PNTR with China, which have cost this country millions of good-paying jobs and, in fact, have resulted in a race to the bottom where people are now earning lower wages.
I want to bring in Antoine Seawright, Leslie Sanchez, and Ken Thomas. Antoine is a CBS News political contributor and Democratic strategist. Leslie's a CBS News political analyst and Republican strategist. Ken's a national political reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Leslie, I want to start with you. Which strategy do you think is working with voters there?
That's a great question. What we know, Rena, is that a tremendous amount of the centrist Democrats have coming around, and I expect to see Joe Biden have a very strong night. The question is, some of the behaviors, is this something that is an inflated, overvalued candidate? It was just, 10 days ago that everybody was wringing their hands wondering if there was going to be this Democrat, insurgency, meaning Bernie Sanders, within the party. And the party came around and aligned behind him. But is it sustainable, or can it and will it be punctured as we move through a very rigorous, demanding campaign schedule?
Ken, Biden had a confrontation today with someone at a Chrysler plant in Detroit today talking about gun rights. I want to play for you that exchange. It's getting a lot of buzz today.
You are actively trying to limit your Second Amendment right and take away your gun.
You're for.
All right,
No, shush. Shush. I support the Second Amendment. Second Amendment, just like right now, if you yell fire, that's not free speech. From the very beginning, I have a shotgun, I have a 20 gauge, a 12 gauge, my son's hunt. Guess what? You're not allowed to own any weapons. I'm not taking your gun away at all. You need 100 rounds.
So when you were in Veto and you said you're going to take our guns back,
I did not say that. That's not. I did not say that.
It's a viral video.
It's a viral video like the other ones they're putting out that are simply a lie.
Well, afterwards, Biden was scheduled to meet with leaders of a gun control organization in Columbus, Ohio. The Second Amendment is such a big issue for some of these voters today. Who really has a better record from the viewpoint of these gun owners? Ken?
Well, I think the Biden campaign feels like there's a very sweet spot of the electorate in the general election who want something done on the gun violence that we've seen over the last few years. And they feel like they can make the case that Trump has basically been beholden to the NRA, but hasn't really done much. And so what Biden has tried to do is propose things like mandatory universal background checks and an assault weapon ban. They feel like that's where the country is on this issue. And, it's interesting to talk to the Biden campaign today. They actually think it's a good video for them to have out there. The Trump campaign tweeted it out, but they feel like it shows him making a strong defense of the Second Amendment, that he, wouldn't seek to take some of the steps that Beto O'Rourke has said, which would be to, provide mandatory universal buyback programs for guns and that sort of thing.
Antoine, Michigan is the big prize of the night, right? This is a state that Bernie Sanders barely won in 2016 against Hillary Clinton. What's working for and against him in the state?
I think what's working against him is Joe-mentum. The momentum that came from South Carolina that went on to Super Tuesday. And if you amp all that together with the high-level endorsements that came along over the past few days, I think that's working against him. The thing that's working for him is his record and his track record and his body of work with white working class voters. They make up a large portion of the electorate that's likely to show up tonight. That was his strong point in 2016. So it could be a pivotal constituency for him to win again. Now, the flip side to that, if African Americans show up, in a big way, as expected, because that's been the consistent story of this presidential primary nomination process. Bernie Sanders could face some trouble, and he could become a political endangered species very quickly.
You're talking about just how important the white working class vote is there in Michigan. I want to sort of flip this around and look at, there's the National Women's Law Center, which surveyed 525 black women in Michigan who are likely to vote in November. You had a chance, you looked at this. What really does it indicate about how black women will vote in Michigan tonight?
Well, it says several things. One, it says black women continue to be the political booster cables or the political concrete of the Democratic Party in general. Okay. And in Michigan, they will make up a large, loud voice in terms of who we nominate and also what turnout looks like in a general election. It also says that we have to do a better job as Democrats of catering to the issues that matter to black women if we want them to turn out in a big way. And when I say the word big, I mean the way they turned out for Doug Jones in the 2017 special election.
Yeah.
It also says to me is that while we are working to bring along other groups that have not showed up for Democrats in 16, we have to make sure we take care of home first. And home for us are African-American women. I would call them the fiber optic cable of this presidential nomination process.
Interesting. That's an interesting analogy. Ken, I want to talk to you a little bit about young voters, who sat out last week on Super Tuesday, contributed to, some people are saying, to Senator Sanders' loss. Can we expect the same to happen Tuesday? Will young people be motivated to get out to the polls? Because, we saw Biden's super victory on Super Tuesday. Can we expect more of the same tonight?
Well, it's an area that the Sanders campaign thought that they would have a lot of strength in, and they have been pretty open that they're disappointed with the level of youth turnout. It was something that helped them in California, but if you look at a state like North Carolina, overall turnout was up and youth turnout was down. So I think the thing that they're trying to do is get college towns to support him. You saw him in Ann Arbor a few days ago to try to get students from the University of Michigan to come out. We're going to try to. He's going to try to see that through in states like Florida down the road. But this is an area where it just hasn't really turned out for him. But at the same time, I think it's a warning sign for the Biden campaign. He has not produced strong numbers with young voters, and he's going to need them in a general election if he's the nominee. And so that's an area of concern, I think, for the Biden campaign as well.
Leslie, I want to ask you about Washington State. It's just behind Michigan with the second highest number of delegates. The state has lost 23 people to the coronavirus. Is Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All message resonating with voters there as this virus continues to spread?
It's going to be a really difficult sell, Rena. I mean, people right now, when there is this kind of national consciousness and everybody's paying attention and concerned about their health and their parents' health or, any their community's health, it's not a time for revolt, but reassurance. And changing healthcare, changing doctors, changing even presidents, it's really difficult for the consciousness to move forward and take that big of a leap. So that message is not going to sell, not at this time. And if anything, that's what I'm saying about Joe Biden, that he may be artificially inflated in terms of everybody moving together for something they understand and know. But you were exactly right before. Latino voters and many Latino voters in many of these swing states do not particularly like the policies of the Obama administration, particularly 3 million deportations, not having a final solution, resolution on DACA students. There's a lot of really hurt feelings and bad history when it comes to immigration reform and this particular previous administration. So there's some challenges there. Working suburban women are going to have some challenges. So, and healthcare being that top of mind issue. So I think we're in a moment and we just don't know how it's going to play out several months from now.
Antoine, I see you shaking your head no. I want to get you to weigh in. If it is a bad night for Bernie Sanders tonight, does it mean it's over? Does he have to drop out?
I think he will be on political life support. In fact, I think he will be in the posture and position Joe Biden was going into South Carolina. And so he will need some place, some state along the way post tonight to serve as his political rehab or his political hospital. The unfortunate thing is there are states like Georgia who are now early voting already. So this is going to send a strong signal about tonight. And when you look up the type of coalition that will get whatever candidate across the finish line line first. I think it will be an alley-oop of expectation for what could come in the general election. There are a lot of disinfected Trump voters who feel frustrated because they have not received what they wanted from the 2016 election.
Yeah.
If they show up in a big way tonight, that could mean trouble for Donald Trump and the Republican Party in the also consequential Michigan in the general election.
All right, Antoine Searide, Leslie Sanchez, Ken Thomas, I want to thank all of you for joining us.